Welcome everyone to our very first virtual wildfire preparedness workshop. We are so thrilled to see so many of you on today's call. Unfortunately, we can't actually see you, but I see that we have 25 folks on the call and it's growing as I'm talking. We do want to thank you in advance for taking the time out of what we know are your busy schedules and really to learn more about what we can do to prepare ourselves and our families for wildfire. So thank you. My name is Nani Barretto, and I am today's MC. And our two wildfire educators on the call are Elizabeth Pickett. Elizabeth, can you give us a wave? And Carson Magoon. Hey there, Carson.
Hi.
We also have Dr. Clay Trowernick on the call. Carson, if you could maybe turn his video on if he's with us. Dr. Clay, he's a fire scientist at the University of Hilo, and he's made himself available for our Q&A. A quick shout out to our partners who without we couldn't do this work, our Hawaii State Legislator and the U.S. Forest Service through the coalitions and collaboratives. Also, a big shout out to our 15 Firewise communities across the state. A lot of them who are using this as an opportunity to spread the word about their wildfire risk to their communities. I just looked at the participant list and I recognize a lot of names on there from Firewise sites. There's 41 of them that registered. And today, right now, we have 30, 32, 33 folks on the call. So again, thank you. Quick poll to find out something about you. We wanted to know what motivated you to join us today. I'm launching this poll for most of you, depending on your device, you should see it pop up. And again, we're asking what motivated you to join us today? And you can check all that apply. Select the responses that best reflect your motivations and then hit submit. Okay, and I'm going to share those results. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of you are already aware that you live in a fire-prone area. Most of you indicated so. There was one person on the call that was told there'd be cookies, so I'm sorry about the misinformation on that one. Hopefully we can make that one up to you. Next slide, Carson. Who we are, Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. We are a nonprofit. We're located on the Big Island of Hawaii. We've been around for almost 20 years. And we serve as the hub of wildfire information, mitigation, really across the region and in the state. We are proactive, we're collaborative, and we're very much partner driven. And we are absolutely honored to serve you guys, our island communities and our firefighting agencies in these efforts. Next slide. Before I hand the mic over to our presenters, if nothing else, here are the key points we want you to leave with today. First, Hawaii has a big wildfire problem. Second, its impacts, they're broad and they're long lasting. Most are started by people, mostly accidental, which means we can do things to prevent them. And number 4, to keep us safe, our families, our communities, it's going to take all of us, and there's a role for everyone. And the last is there's a lot we can do ahead of time, both individually and collectively. So the bulk of this workshop will be spent on tips and tricks for what you can do ahead of time, but we did reserve about 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. You can also use the chat box to ask questions throughout the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Elizabeth. Let me unmute her, possibly.
All right, thank you, Nani. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
All right, so we will start this out with the foundational understanding that Hawaii and the Western Pacific have a wildfire problem that's increasing. The impacts of those fires take place from Mauka to Makai, from the burning of native forests and watershed forests and sensitive habitats to the post-fire erosion that enters nearshore waters and can smother coral reefs. And the impacts not only affect natural resources, but also municipal infrastructure and budgets, traffic during fire events, human health from during fire smoke and post-fire dust. And also, of course, there are threats and risks to homes and communities and lives and safety of both our community members and our firefighters. So we also want to make the point that fires are taking place on both the windward and the leeward sides of all islands in Hawaii, and they can happen anytime or in any place when conditions are dry. So what we have here is a map of fire ignitions over the course of a little over a decade. And while fires get larger where there is more dry vegetation, the important point here is that fires are being started on both windward areas and leeward areas, and that the windward areas do burn when the conditions are dry. So doing this mapping project, we learned that in addition to fires occurring on all sides of all islands, we know that 99% of fires are human caused. The majority of those are accidental. Like Nani said, that means that they're preventable. And finally, we wanted to make the point, Carson, if you go to the next slide, we just wanted to point out that the Wildfire Potential 30-day outlook from late October through now and the next few weeks is that there's still a high significant fire potential. And that's in part because of persistent drought and dry conditions in a lot of areas. So we have additional information about wildfire and drought if you want to track this on our website. And Nani is going to paste that link into the website in case you want to learn more. Finally, before we dive into the Ready, Set, Go preparedness information, we want to emphasize the idea that it takes everyone to protect against wildfire. Firefighters do a great job of putting out fires, but everybody needs to be involved in preventing accidental fire ignitions and also having your family, your yard, your neighbors and community prepared and ready to better survive any fires that do come close. The good news is that with wildfire, there's just so much you can do. You're not stuck. Fire follows fuel. Fire can only burn where there's something to burn. And you can do a lot about that. So keep in mind, you get the most safety and the most protection when you take proactive actions. And we thank you because you're already beginning to do that today if you haven't already been doing that so far. So that's actually why we're all here, is to continue that learning and to take those proactive actions. And those strategies are really laid out well in the Ready, Set, Go action guide. We'll be following that today when we present these recommended actions to you. This information that you'll hear today is based on a lot of hard-earned lessons that came about from very destructive fires more than a decade ago in Australia, when a high number of fatalities occurred when people evacuated too late and got caught in smoke-filled roads, fire-filled roads that had a lot of traffic. And this is even the case for fires you may have heard about more recently in California. So what you'll learn today covers the entire timeline from before fire season through a fire event, if that should happen. And this way you can maximize your chances for safety for your home, your yard, and most importantly, your family and your neighbors. And then I wanted to point out that this is really the best there is in terms of a comprehensive program. So excited to share it with you today. And with that, I want to hand it over to Carson Magoon, our other educator, who's going to dive into the details of the Ready, Set, Go action guide.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. That was a great overview as to the reasons why we teach wildfire preparedness in this way. So now we'll go ahead and get into the weeds, or remove those fire-prone weeds if you want to get literal. All right. So the three most effective ways to keep your belongings and family safe during wildfire are creating defensible space and managing vegetation around your home, hardening your home and making sure that your house is made of fire-resistant materials, and also having and practicing an evacuation plan in the case of a wildfire. And these are the ready portion of Ready, Set, Go. And you'll notice that ready is the longest portion. So buckle up and we'll get into it. So we'll start with the idea of defensible space. And if you look here, the house on the left, there's a lot of defensible space. Essentially what defensible space means is that a first responder should be able to go in and have enough access to feel like their life is not in danger to protect a home. And if there is not very much defensible space, like if they can't get in there and they can't get out safely, they're much less likely to go in and defend a home from wildfire. So with that, we have a poll, a little question here for y'all, wondering if you can tell me, why do most structures ignite from nearby wildfires? Is it a tsunami of fire from nearby trees that just engulf homes? Is it embers from nearby wildfires that ignite flammable materials around the home? Is it flames themselves jumping from house to house and from tree to tree? Or do wildfires not ignite houses unless they're located inside of a forest?
I'm going to give them just a sec, Carson. I see them coming in. And sorry, guys, about that last poll. I realized it wasn't a select all that apply. All right, I'm going to end the poll and let's see what they think, Carson.
All right. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that. We have 95% saying that embers from nearby wildfires ignite flammable materials around the home. So it sounds like we have some pros here. There's definitely the majority of homes that get ignited from wildfires are from embers. And here is a little example of that. I'm going to play this little video. This is a experiment put on by the Institute for Business and Home Safety. And embers can actually fly up to a mile on the wind and can enter houses through small holes, such as vents or little nooks and crannies. They can also ignite flammable stuff outside of the house, which is what we're seeing here. When flames come into contact with the house or stuff inside of the house ignites from embers, that's when there is this prolonged heat that can really cause a house fire to ignite. And the whole thing is we don't want the structure to ignite in the first place. So by removing some of those little things, those little flammable materials around your perimeter, your house is much less likely to ignite. Also paying attention to those little vents, those nooks and crannies where embers could get in, and either blocking them off with sort of metal mesh or by blocking off the entrance altogether. So we're going to get into defensible space now. And this is the space around the home that can be defended from wildfire. And the goal here is that we don't want lots of fuel close to the structure. And if there's not lots of fuel, there would be fewer flames and less fire intensity. With fewer flames, it's easier to extinguish, and the fire itself is less likely to ignite the house. And this all comes down to good housekeeping and, Firewise landscaping, where the first 5 feet next to your house should be known as the fire-free zone. After that, we want to sort of have small amounts of vegetation. And then the further you get from your house, the more vegetation you can have, because it's less likely that it would be able to ignite your house in the case of a wildfire. So zone 1 and zone 2 are what a lot of professionals refer to in the fire world. But most importantly, we want to focus on the area closest to your house. That is the most sensitive to wildfire. And if you have extra time, energy, money, you can focus on the space beyond your house's perimeter, like the 30 to 100 feet beyond your house. That is really good too. But really, the place you need to be the most specific and pay the most attention to detail is just the perimeter around your house, especially the first 30 to 50 feet. And so we'll get into the practical tips now and use these more diligently the closer you are to your house, like I was just saying. And so why is defensible space important? We have this video. Why is defensible space important? Up to 90% of ignitions from wildfires are caused by embers. One side of this house ignited after 10 minutes of ember exposure, while the other side did not. And so what's the difference here? Defensible space and fire-resistant materials on the right side. And you can see that there's rock mulch around the base of that house that isn't going to light on fire. The left side of the house, it has wood shingles on the walls, and it has a lot of flammable brush and other plants just right next to the house. So when those ignite, it's really easy to sort of start the house on fire. And if you've ever made a campfire, I really relate this to kind of having kindling that ignites a log. And you're not going to be able to start a log on fire easily unless if you have the kindling to ignite that campfire. But if you add a bunch of kindling next to it, it's easy to get that fire rolling. So even the tiniest kindling can ignite from an ember. And so sweeping and raking and just getting that little stuff away from the perimeter of your house is a really good place to start. All right, so that defensible space, immediate 5-foot fire-free zone, kind of mentioned this earlier, but this is where we should pay the most attention. And if you can imagine, if embers hit your wall and then they land on the ground, and whatever they land on, they could ignite if it's ignitable. So using cinder or gravel as a non-combustible surface material is a really great option. And having some green and hydrated plants in this area is okay. But remember that only hydrated and green plants and no dry stuff, nothing that is like completely dead or nothing that looks like my first garden that I tried to make when I was a little boy. And so also remember that many homes in Hawaii are on stilts. So remove those leaves and wood from underneath your house if your house is on stilts, and if there's a way that those debris could get underneath your house. If your house does have those that like wooden lattice you see in the right-hand photo, you can block that area off using 1/8 inch or smaller metal screening, and that will stop the embers from getting into your house. That 1/8 inch or smaller metal screening. And it'll also stop the leaves from accumulating in there as well. All right, here's another video to help paint the picture. Right here we have the fire-free zone. It's bigger than 5 feet, and you see there's no vegetation right next to the wall, so if there is a fire, nothing can start up right here. We also have these Firewise plants right here. This is aloe vera and the bromeliad, both very high moisture content plants that will not spark up if an ember lands on it. All right. Yeah, so.
Thank you.
What was that, Nani?
Nice, Carson. I like that.
Oh, thanks. Thumbs up. Okay. So, yeah, here's where you really want to make it happen. That 5-foot fire-free zone. And, you know, if you do have plants there, that's fine. And we know that we're not going to tell people to like remove all of your plants. And we realize that people really love their plants. But if you do have plants, try to make sure that they don't have stuff that could easily ignite. Like I'm noticing in this video, even there's some dead leaves on that bromeliad plant on the left, and that needs to be cleaned up so that it doesn't start on fire. And so we're going to keep on moving here to some practical tips. These are things you can do around your house. And if you have any questions about any of these, go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we will make sure to have question time towards the end. All right, practical tips, cleaning those gutters. Dry leaves left in gutters can be very flammable.
I got right here. Yeah.
And firebrands, also known as embers, can land and ignite the structure by landing in this kindling material left in the gutters. So cleaning out those gutters is important. And also remember that if the wind takes debris there, that's also where it will take embers in the case of a nearby wildfire. And wherever embers land, if they land on something flammable, then you're playing with fire, so to speak. All right. So here we are. This is a really good looking yard. Amazing looking yard, actually. And if you've ever heard of xeriscaping, this is sort of what they're trying to accomplish here by converting these spaces with vegetation into spots with rocks. And you can see these rock pathways, there's rock gardens that you can use, and rock stepping stones. We love rocks at Hawaii Wildfire because they don't ignite, like they can't light on fire, so they're really Firewise. And if you can create that 5-foot zone around your house using rocks, then that's a great move.
That's my garden, guys. That's why he's complimenting it so highly. Thanks, Carson. That was my COVID project in the early days.
I'm trying to compliment my boss's garden so I get extra points. All right, here we go. We're keeping on. That 5-foot fire-free zone that extends around the entire home perimeter. And don't forget to look up above the house, like towards the top of the house where there might be trees encroaching on the house. Some people think that, oh, you know, this looks really cozy having this tree right there. It's kind of nice. It's like, giving a little hug to the house. But fire folks think, oh, it looks kind of like a fire wick, that if the tree lights on fire, it's going to lead to that house. And so that 5-foot fire-free zone includes the area from the bottom of the structure to the top of the structure. So I'll look around, up and down, all around the house. And right next to the house is the most sensitive to wildfires, like I said. So anything you can do to sort of space out the area between any sort of flammable fuel and your house, the better off you'll be. And Nani, I think we're gonna have another poll here. I have a little quiz for y'all, and we'll see what you all think. Where is the most important place to reduce flammable objects in order to reduce your home's wildfire risk? I'm gonna try to drill this idea into all of you. So
We're testing who's listening, right, Carson?
right, yes, we're gonna do a quick vote.
They're coming in quick.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
And here, I'll end it and share it.
Right on.
Woohoo!
So, almost most of you,
Ready.
yeah, 95% said the 5-foot zone around, under, and above your house. That's the 5-foot fire-free zone. So that is the most sensitive, and definitely the places beyond that are important also. We don't want to discount 20 feet, 30 feet from your house, but if there's anything that's like gonna catch on fire for sure, and it's right next to your house, that's a high risk thing. So thanks for answering that poll. And here we go. We're gonna go into the reason why you should try to not have any super flammable plants right near windows. You can kind of see in this video that this fire is starting. It's combusting right outside this window, and the heat actually breaks the window. And so once this window breaks, embers and flames can actually get into the house and smoke, and that will sort of ignite the house from the inside. So keep in mind that when this happens and you have this big hole into your house and you have internal structure fires, that makes it much more likely that the fire department won't be able to put it out. They won't be able to save your house. And so this is like sort of like one of those weak points, you know, right outside of a window. Try to make sure that you don't have anything extremely combustible right there. Also, a really important note here is that dual paned tempered glass windows are much more heat resistant than single pane windows or non-tempered. And the tempered is, I believe, the most valuable part of that. If you have tempered glass windows, they last something like 5 to 10 times longer during extreme heat scenarios than a regular window. Next, practical tip, removing those ladder fuels. So what are ladder fuels? They allow a surface fire to climb into the canopy of a tree or climb up vegetation. So you might think of it as removing rungs of a ladder if you're gonna remove these ladder fuels. And that way the fire cannot climb up. And you can look at the kiabi tree on the left. They're following the 10-foot rule. So this typical rule of thumb to really slow that fire spread and make it less, they make a fire less aggressive if it does start up, is having this 10-foot rule. That's 10 feet between vegetation. So canopy fires, if a fire does get into a canopy, the top of a tree, it can be very dangerous. And this can launch lots of embers, can launch them high into the air where they travel farther on the wind. They can increase intensity of the fire and overall make it more difficult to manage that fire. So remove those ladder fuels and remember that 10-foot rule. So horizontally, we have the same concept. There's a 10-foot rule that we're hoping to achieve between clumps of vegetation. And especially close to a house, the further you can have these clumps of vegetation, the better, so that if there is a clump that ignites, it's less likely to spread, or it spreads slower. So the slower you can get that fire to spread, the more time you'll have for the fire department to respond, and the less intense the fire will be. So do we have another poll right here?
Yeah, we do, and we have time for it. And I'm liking my Zoom poll, so let's do another one.
All right, let's do it.
How much distance should you have between clumps of vegetation, both horizontally and vertically? 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, all of it. Your yard should only really have rocks and sand. All right, I think I'm good with 70%. I'm going to end the poll. Sorry for those that are too slow. And sharing.
All right.
It's back on this one.
Yeah, totally. We have one vote for all of it. Your yard should only be rocks and sand. And so if you want to do that, that's definitely probably the most Firewise option. But we know that a lot of people like their trees and their shrubs and stuff. So it's okay to have plants. But having them be 10 feet apart from each other, 10 feet away from each other can really help. If they're 20 feet, that's also great. That's you're going above and beyond. And 5 feet, at least 5 feet from your house if you're going to have flammable vegetation. All right. Thanks for voting on that one.
So Carson, if you have clumps 5 feet apart, like off in the distance in your yard, is that okay or not okay?
Generally, yeah. If you have clumps of vegetation, like if you have a bush here and then another bush over there, if you were able to keep them 10 feet apart from each other, that's best.
Gotcha.
If you have a tree that has a lot of branches that are hanging down, you're able to trim those 10 feet off of the ground from the grass below it. That is gonna hopefully stop the fire from spreading, or at least make it less likely the fire will be able to jump into that canopy. So yeah, the 10-foot rule, that's sort of our rule of thumb that we like to tell people. So another practical tip is mowing that lawn. Here we can see that some people have gotten creative in quarantine, but this is a great opportunity for you to just, simple landscaping can really make a difference. You can put your keiki to work on this one so they can earn their keep if you have kids, but reward it. It's pretty nice to mow your lawn. I kind of like mowing my lawn. It's sort of like, relaxing. So yeah, mow that lawn. 3 inches or less is what we like to tell people, and that's standard practice. And also, if you have these Firewise landscaping principles in mind, and you have landscapers, go ahead and tell them this also. This is stuff that they probably would understand, and they might be able to get on the same wavelength if you're trying to reduce your fuels. All right, and here we have a video of our coworker Melissa and her husband Chuck. They're reducing some fuels here.
So this empty lot right next to our house is full of guinea grass, which my husband Chuck is weed eating. Go Chuck!
Yeah, Chuck is going to town on that guinea grass. So he's really taking it down. But look at that stuff. Look how flammable it could be. And this is after some rain, but if all that stuff dries out, which could only take a few days, maybe a week, and if there's no rain, all that guinea grass could all of a sudden become really fine tinder that will ignite really quickly. So try to reduce this as much as you can, especially close to your house, and consider replacing it with Firewise plants or other sorts of plants that might be less fire prone. And if you're using power tools, make sure your spark arresters are working so that you don't spark a fire while doing this work. And it's just good to make sure that your equipment is well tuned. And so don't forget your PPE. Sorry, personal protective equipment also. It's a fun tongue twister. Vegetation types. Firewise plants versus fire prone plants. What are some of the things that we look for? A few things are water usage, their maintenance, how much you need to maintain these plants, such as the amount of leaf litter they drop. And the idea is that you want to have a plant that won't get so dry during a drought, or maybe during regular the regular seasons here, that it can turn into a fire prone piece of fuel. If your plant is able to hold on to that moisture content and they're able to stay green and hydrated throughout the year, they're less likely to ignite. So the exact plant depends on where you live, but think about whether it can light on fire easily. Would you bring it to your campfire and throw it in there, and add it to your campfire? That might be a sign that it is not Firewise. Yeah, so native plants are often more drought tolerant, but it really depends where you live, because in some climates you might have certain plants that can use more water, and then other plants that you need them to be drought tolerant because you might live in a drought prone area. Reducing that dead vegetation, kind of beating a dead bush here, but no, just joking. That was a terrible pun. Anyway,
I laugh.
It's funny because I can't hear all of your laughs because you're all on mute, but I assume you're all cracking up. Okay, here we go. We're gonna reduce the dead branches, twigs, and leaves around the house. And this includes dead branches that are attached to trees, such as these banana trees on the right-hand side, especially within 30 feet of your house. Try to reduce that fuel. Pruning trees and removing the dead and excess branches is not only good fire-wise, but it's good for your trees. They will use less of their energy on these branches that they don't need anymore and devote them towards the branches that are living. And are there other combustible piles near your structure? This is another thing to look out for. Here we have lath.
Step 1, put on your shoes. Step 2, put on your gloves. Step 3, pick up the dead bird.
All right, he's telling you some good tips on how to reduce those pieces of wood. If you have wood piles underneath your house, you can kind of think of that as kindling in your campfire, and your house is that big log on top. So removing that wood, making a pile outside, or even putting them in a shed is a great way to go. And I got into this conversation with Melissa about her rattan patio furniture and how it's really flammable. So she, this was her response.
What, you mean you were telling me I need to move my rattan furniture off my lanai?
I appreciate your laughs, Nani. It means we're really hitting the mark. So I'm not telling you that you have to remove all of your furniture, but think about how flammable that it might be. And there have been instances where houses have ignited because of the flammable stuff that's on the deck or close to the house or just sitting right outside. There was one house that burned down in Colorado from a pet bed that was on the porch. So think about that. And if you're shopping for new patio furniture, metal or non-flammable patio furniture works. Or even like if you do go with wood, like more solid pieces of wood that aren't as much of kindling material. All right, and then another important one is that fire engines are a pretty large vehicle. They're 14 feet by 14 feet tall and wide. So making sure that they have enough room to access your house is important. Also, the visibility of addresses is important to make sure that they are getting to the right place. If they can identify the structure they're going to get there faster, and they'll probably be able to help you faster. So removing this dead vegetation or the alive vegetation that might impede a fire truck from getting into your house, making sure that your driveway is clear and that they can get in there, that will really help them fight that fire. Now we're going to get into home hardening. So we're still on the ready, set, go, but these are actions you can take to reduce the flammability of your structure. So we have this ready, set, go guide that we're hoping that you all will download and take home with you and read. And this is one page on that Ready, Set, Go guide that gives a lot of details about what you can do to make your home less flammable. Anywhere embers can get into your house, gaps and cracks, uncovered vents, we usually see in the home ignite because of embers that might get into these crevices. So that's an important place to start. But also remember to replace like wooden shingles. If you have wooden shingles and you want to, you know, replace your roof or replace your walls, that's a good place to start because those are very flammable also. But we recommend looking at the Ready, Set, Go guide, and you can sort of read through all of these home modifications.
And by the way, we'll follow up with an email to everybody, and we'll include the link or a PDF of the actual action guide.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so this is a very important place to start for the survivability of your home. You know, weaknesses where combustible debris accumulates, such as your eaves or underneath your deck or underneath your house if it's on stilts. But you know, I'm curious what you all think about the expense of this. I know that is a big deal. So we're gonna go and administer another poll. We're gonna ask you, how much do you think it costs to create a house, to build a house with fire-resistant materials?
Carson, we don't have a lot of time. I want to catch up by a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just end this poll in just a minute.
Okay.
I want to do a time check and make sure we save time for Q&A.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll hustle through it.
Okay.
All right. So it looks y'all are hitting the nail on the head right here. The price is comparable to other building materials that people use. That's sort of a shocking thing that a lot of people don't realize. So thanks for voting in that, and we're going to continue on. The last part of Ready, from Ready, Set, Go, is having and practicing a plan. This is a very important part of being prepared for wildfire and making sure that your whole family is involved and that everyone is aware of what's going to happen in the case of an emergency is the final step in Ready, Set, the Ready from Ready, Set, Go. And so it's equally important for residents to have a plan as it is to just fix up your backyard. So don't just have the plan, but also practice it and include anyone in your community that might need assistance. Not everyone has the capacity to get out independently. So it's really, really helpful if you kind of work at this from the community angle. But you know, you're going through this with your family is really important too. The back of this Ready, Set, Go guide has workbook pages for people to create an emergency plan, including contact info, home evacuation protocol, etc. So this sort of wraps up the Ready portion of Ready, Set, Go, which is where the bulk of the protection occurs and where you'll spend the majority of your preparedness time. So these are some final bullets of what we just learned. And make sure you have that plan and go over it yearly with your family. And if you're able to include your neighbors, then that's awesome. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Elizabeth now. And thanks for hearing me out on that. And go ahead and listen to the set and the go portion.
Thanks, Carson.
All right, thank you, Carson. So we want to emphasize again that the ready part that Carson went over is by far the place where the majority of your effort will be spent. But that said, we want to go over set and go as well, because while they take less time and they take less money, they are equally essential and critical to safety. So by now, as I've been talking, hopefully you've been able to discern what is happening in this photo. The divers are in front are completely unaware of what is happening behind them. And if you can't see what that is, you might need to squint, but there's an enormous shark sneaking up on them. So we use this slide to point out that we don't want fire to sneak up on you like this. There are plenty of indications around you to let you know when fire hazard is high, but it takes paying attention and being aware of your surroundings to let you know what's happening around you. And in the fire world, we call that situational awareness. Carson, if you want to move on, I want to point out that this awareness takes place in two ways. So throughout the year, you can watch the state and the color of the vegetation. So you notice when it's drying out, notice when the green grass and bushes are turning yellow and then brown and then gray, let that alert you to the fact that fire hazard is increasing, and let it also make you hustle into taking these preparedness actions that Carson went over. The sooner the better, the earlier the better. Second, we want to make sure that you keep aware when there's any fire nearby in your vicinity. So this is an example of a situation where that points out where we don't want you to make any assumptions. So just stay vigilant and observant and alert if there's a fire anywhere nearby, and don't assume that because of fire and smoke look far away, or because wind is blowing fire away from your neighborhood. In this case, in West Maui, it looked like it was blowing uphill away from any residential areas. Don't assume that that's a permanent situation and you can just check out and not stay alert. So you can see later in the day on the next slide, Carson, that winds changed and fire and smoke traveled back downhill, back toward residential areas, and consumed them with smoke, and the lives and safety in residential areas actually were threatened. So we use that to make sure that you're aware that things change over time. So stay alert if there's a fire anywhere nearby. This is yet another reminder that while direct flame can cause ignitions and superheated air also can cause ignitions, one of our biggest threats really is those flying embers, and they can travel for miles. So just because a fire is a little bit farther away than a direct flame could hit any residential boundaries, that doesn't leave you in the clear. We also have to think through the fact that nearby fires, even a couple miles away, can still send embers your way, threatening lives and homes. So we want to take this chance to, now that we're on the go part of the program, the Ready, Set, Go program is based on analyses and lessons learned about how we can best reduce risk. And it's recommended that you don't necessarily wait for an evacuation order to leave your neighborhood if a fire is close by. We've already stated that the majority of fatalities occur during congested evacuation traffic. So keep in mind, we also need to keep roads clear for emergency responders to get into the area and defend it. So this video here shows what it could look like if you're stuck evacuating at the last minute when fire is near. We recommend, and Ready, Set, Go recommends, that you leave way early, way before an evacuation order. You can always return later if it turns out not to be necessary. So go shopping, go to dinner, go to the beach, whatever, but the safest place is far away from any fire. And high traffic evacuation situations are stressful, and sometimes it's the last place you want to get caught. So the go part of Ready, Set, Go really encourages you not just to evacuate when you're told, but leave early if at all possible. So that said, make sure you're staying alerted to evacuation orders that are issued, and follow the directives given to you by those coordinating the safest exit and shelter plans given the situation, especially if you haven't been able to leave early. And those agencies are your county civil defense or emergency management agencies, and they have an alert system, and we strongly encourage you to sign up for those alert notifications. And Nani has pasted a link in the chat box for you to go ahead and get on those alert lists. So again, this is kind of the summary and the end of the Ready, Set, Go part of this program. And as a reminder, we're just encouraging you to have your yard ready with defensible space, your home hardened with fire resistant or non-combustible building materials, your family ready and prepared with a family emergency plan practiced well in advance of a fire. We're reminding you to stay alert throughout the year, watching for those seasonal changes and also for drought and dry conditions, and to stay vigilantly alert during any nearby fire events. And finally, we are encouraging you, so please remember this, leave early if at all possible. And we feel really confident that if you follow these recommendations from start to finish, you can leave your house early with the peace of knowing that you've done all you can way in advance. So that said, the comprehensive Ready, Set, Go action planning guide, like Nani and Carson mentioned before, are available on our website. Paper copies are also available. If you'd like to request one, we would be happy to mail you a copy. So Nani is posting that information in the chat box. You can also go to hawaiiwildfire.org, our website, to look for those materials. And we're going to make it available via the link in the email that we'll send out after this webinar. And that said, if you're interested in a really simplified fact sheet that is not the full comprehensive program, but just a 2-page fact sheet that covers some of the key Ready, Set, Go actions and also includes how we can prevent the most common forms of accidental fire ignitions in Hawaii. That information is also available on our website on the Wildfire Lookout webpage. This information was specifically developed for Hawaii. It was endorsed by all fire and forestry agencies in the state. And we specifically encourage you to pass this fact sheet or this information along to your neighbors, your community associations, and friends and family members in order to help ensure that everyone knows that fire really is a big deal with ongoing hazards across Hawaii, both wet and dry sides, every island. And we want to make sure that everybody knows and is connected to the basic information on steps they can take to protect their homes and families and keep them safe. So Nani is also sharing that link in the chat box so that you can access that. And on that note, we want to wrap this up by saying that there is greater protection for the entire community when everyone participates proactively. So when you take actions around your homes and with your neighbors, it all does add up to reduce fire spread across the landscape in the community and also across both natural resources and residential areas. So thank you for joining us for today, and thank you so much for learning more and for being part of the solution and doing your part.